Hi everyone, Fox is here. I'm bringing you my weekly wrap-up, which is actually not a weekly wrap-up, it's going to be 3 weeks wrap-up for the period between April 4th to April 23rd. I know that I haven't posted my weekly wrap-ups for the past 2 weeks, but it's only because I've been away. I traveled to Jamaica and then I was sick for a week, and I couldn't really read that much as I wanted to, and because of that, I had to postpone one of my reading progress videos. Well, let's get started. Okay, so here is everything that I read in the past 3 weeks, which is not much to be honest. I read 2 ebooks, both of them fall under gay romance type of novels. I'm going to post links down below because I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, so I'm not going to go into much detail about those books. Just please be aware that they contain mature content. I read 2 graphic novels, the first one being RatQueens volume number 2. I read volume number 1 a couple of weeks ago and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and this one was a very close read to me as well. It's 4.5 stars, or almost 5 stars. It's a story about 4 amazing and very diverse characters who are really just kick ass. They're amazing, and there's a lot of stuff which is happening in here. There is heartbreak, there is a bit of betrayal, and there is awesome, really epic fighting. I watched one of the videos by CC from Problems of a Book Nerd, and she said that when she read volume number 1, she felt that those characters were quite one-dimensional and that they were not as well written as she hoped they would be, just because the authors of the graphic novel are men. And in some ways I do agree with her opinion on that. I do feel that those characters could have been more dimensional, so to say. They could have be given more depth, but at the same time in volume 2 we're given more of a backstory for each of the characters, which I think very well reflects who they are right now. So I'm really enjoying the series. I gave it 4.5 stars for this volume and I cannot wait to read more. Seriously, just awesome. And the art style is also really good. I mean, just look at the squid. Seriously, no, I really like it. And let me try and no, I mean, I didn't even know what to say. It's just I feel it's awesome. I feel it's absolutely awesome. What? Look at this one. Isn't it gorgeous? I think she's gorgeous. Absolutely. I cannot really pinpoint who is my favorite character in the series, but I think, I don't know, I just love all of them. Yeah. Another graphic novel that I picked up during this period was The Servant of the Bones by Anne Rice. If you don't know, Anne Rice is a well-known horror writer. She's an American and she is famous for her the vampire series. I think the most famous of her books would be The Interview with a Vampire, which was made into the movie. And I watched the movie, and I watched also The Queen of the Damned, and I read several of her novels when I was a teenager. I liked them. I was a fan, I would say, and when I saw this graphic novel in the library, I just had to get it. So I got it, and for some reason I thought that I read Servant of the Bones before. Either I read it and I completely forgot the plot, or I just have the book and I never got to it. But I picked it up and I realized that it's not the book that I thought it would be. It's completely different. It's I think the plot was quite well transferred or translated into a graphic novel format. The art itself is absolutely gorgeous. It's mostly brownish, reddish, well, more like yellowish. There is a lot of gold in there as well, and there is a reason for it. As you can see, the art is beautiful. There is quite a lovely introduction by Anne Rice at the beginning of the novel. I did enjoy it, but plot-wise, I thought that the story was not really well developed, and I think it is just the problem of the graphic novel. I'm sure if I read the actual novel before reading this one, I would have appreciated the plot way more. But when I was reading the graphic novel, I did appreciate the art and the way the characters were described, and I must admit that I was also surprised that they managed to preserve Anne Rice's quite peculiar style of writing. When she writes, she writes the books which are very, I don't want to say whimsical, because this is not probably not the best word to describe, but it's almost like whimsical. When I read it, it's as if you're in some sort of, alternate state of mind. You're like between the reality and the dream. You're like half asleep. And this is the feeling that I get when I read her novels, because her writing is quite flowing. It's half of the half stream of the consciousness, half reality, and I think in particular you can tell when you read such novels as Interview with a Vampire, which is, as I remember correctly, written in the first point of view, and many of her stories incorporate the certain setting in which a main character is approached by someone else and is asked to tell them his story, his story of his life. And this is the case for this novel as well. So it begins with Azrael, a ghost, appearing at old man's house, essentially in the middle of nowhere, and he saves the old man because old man has fever and he lives virtually in the middle of nowhere. So he treats him and helps him, and in return he tells him the story of his life. Gorgeous art. I would give art itself 5 stars, but the plot is only 3 stars for me, so overall rating was probably also 3 stars. I might pick up the actual novel and read it, and I'll see how it goes. It's not very high on my priority list, but yeah, I mean, just it was very nice to revisit Anne Rice's writing, because it's been years since I read any of her books, and I used to quite enjoy them, and I enjoyed this one mostly because of the art. I just couldn't really get behind what was happening in the story. So yeah, a bit, I don't know, I'm a bit confused, but 3 stars, yeah. And the last but not least book that I read is, ta-da! Yeah, I know, Red Queen, finally, I finally finished this book, and, oh my god, okay, so I found out about this book a year ago from Sasha Ellsberg's book channel, and she was basically just gushing over this book. I listened to it and I thought, okay, maybe it's YA, but it's fantasy and the setting seems to be quite interesting, and I decided to pick it up. A year later, and I just never could find time to read it. Finally, I picked it up 2 months ago. Imagine that, 2 months ago. I picked it up, but there's always something else that required my attention. There is always some book that was due back to the library, there was something else. So I put it on hold, and I read about 30% of it, put it on hold, put away, and finally last night, I was like, okay, I have to finish it because it's interesting. I don't know when it's where it's going in terms of plot. I want to know what's going to happen next. And I finally picked it up and I finished it this morning. And here's what I think about it. I think it's a very good book for the first book in the series. It's not something that blew my mind. It's not amazing. It's not too complicated, and at the same time, the world itself is very interesting. It's a techno-style fantasy slash dystopian, because there are some dystopian elements to the story as well. I did enjoy it. I did find it quite interesting. The problems that I had was with the main character. So the book is written in the first point of view, and the main character is, she is red, she's born red, but then she discovers that she has some magic abilities that usually only Silver have. And the problem, I do understand that the situation that she found herself in is quite unique, that she didn't know what was going on, that she was basically thrust into the world of silvers, and she had no other way, she had no options, she had no choice. I do understand that in this cases people are quite prone to making rush decisions, but when I was reading the book I couldn't really understand why she kept changing her opinions about people so easily. She basically was just swinging back and forth between whether she likes someone or she hates them, and that was, I don't know, that was just, it was just irking. Like, it was really annoying me. I do understand that she's a teenager, and like, honestly, let's be real, all teenagers are prone to some mood swings, but at the same time, like, she had to keep herself together in this case because a lot of things depended on her, and she was hating someone, then she was loving them again, then she was betraying someone, then she was claiming that she's friends with them. If you read the book, you probably know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to avoid spoilers here. And the problem with the book lies in the fact that since it's written in the first point of view, it's very difficult to avoid um, being in the head of that character, and because of that I was slightly annoyed by the narrative in general. But in the terms of the world building and in the terms of other characters, I quite enjoyed it. I did absolutely love both brothers, and you know what, when Sasha was talking about this book on her channel, she said that the betrayal in the story blew her away, that it was so good and so unexpected that she couldn't see it happening. And when she mentioned that and I started reading the book, at some point I realized that, yeah, I know what is going to happen. Because everything seemed too perfect, everything seemed too good to be true, and everything was kind of going way too smoothly, like way too good to be true. And at some point I just realized, okay, I get it, I think I know what's going to happen. And because of that, when that thing finally happened, I was not surprised. I was not surprised, but I didn't know how it's going to play out, and I also didn't know how it's going to wrap up, how the author is going to wrap up the ending, because obviously it ends with a cliffhanger, because this is the book number 1 in this series, and I believe it's not a trilogy, but actually it's 4 books or 5 books. So this is just the beginning, and I get it, but I found it quite interesting. Because of the problems that I had with the main character, and also because of the fact that even though Victoria does a very good job on describing different types of magic and very good job on describing the palace where everything is happening, other places are described not in full. There are like glimpses of or impressions of places and things. Because of that, and because of the fact, even though it's a fantasy series and we have more than one location where actions take place, we don't have any maps. I'm sorry, I know maybe I'm very old school, but in a lot of old fantasy books and some of the new books as well, there are maps, and when you have a map of the kingdom or a map of some territory or a continent or anything, just map of the world, it just makes more easier, at least for me as a reader, to understand the boundaries of the world. So if they move somewhere, say they travel to some other place, I have no understanding whether they're traveling within the bounds of the same city or they're traveling within the bounds of, say, district, or maybe it's 2 different provinces, like, or maybe it's just 2 different countries. At the ending they do move somewhere and there are mentions of other places. That's why I got a bit confused of whether it's the same province. I mean, like, it's the same kingdom, but is it, like, how close it is? I have no idea. Because of that, I gave the book overall 3.5 stars. It's a very solid read, it's a good start, and I do have Glass Sword and I cannot wait to read it, but it did not blow me away, even though I wish it did. I really wish it did. And the cover is amazing. The cover is really beautiful. So yeah, 3.5 stars. Here we go, guys. This is everything that I read plus 2 ebooks like I mentioned before. I know that's usually this is what I read in 1 week, and this is what took me, like, it took me 3 weeks basically to read this. And even more so, I read all of this in the last couple of few days, to be honest, just because I was sick, and before that I was just really busy. But please let me know down below what you think about it, especially Red Queen, because I'm really curious. I know that everyone on BookTube read this book, and probably everyone except for me read Glass Sword. At the same time, I just want to see if there are other people out there who are kind of on the fence with this book. Even though I say I liked it, and I did, I do see a lot of holes in the plot, and I want to know your opinion about it. If you read any of the graphic novels that I mentioned, please let me know down below as well, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye! I'm sorry if my voice sounds a bit off today. I'm still sick, and it's a bit difficult to talk, to be honest, but I'm trying not to strain my voice too much because I need to once again pre-film several videos, and yeah. Where's my tea?